Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today I want to talk about what I believe is one of the most misunderstood things about fishing equipment, and more specifically, it has to do with fishing reels. Most people, when purchasing a reel, do not look carefully enough at what the gear ratio speed is of the reel that they're choosing. It's one of those things that really can make you much better at fishing a certain technique, and it can make you much less productive at fishing a certain technique. So choosing the right gear ratio speed is really something that is needed when purchasing a new reel, or even when choosing the right reel for the bait that you want to be throwing at a certain time. So that's what I want to do today, guys, is go over these, talk about them. I'm going to use my Abu Garcia reels because that's what I use, that's what I'm familiar with. But most major brands will have similar reels in their lineup. So you just want to be able to take what I'm informing you about my reels and apply them to whatever reels that you choose to use. I do want to point out, guys, that if you are looking for some new reels, check out the Abu Garcia line of reels. You can do that at Tackle Warehouse. Please use my affiliate link. It's a good way to support the channel. The link is in the description for the video. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start with the low end gear ratio speeds. So the first one here I've got is a Revo winch. This right here is a 5.4 to 1 gear ratio reel. You can see I've beaten this one up pretty good. I've been using it for a long time. The key with a 5.4 to 1 gear ratio reel, in this case with this Abu Garcia Revo winch, is that it picks up only 22 inches of line per full reel turn. So that means every time I turn the handle one full reel, I pick up 22 inches of line. That's actually a pretty decent amount of line when you think about how little bit of movement that took me to pick up that 22 inches of line. So when you're really moving it good, you can really be moving your bait in at a decent pace. The thing is, a 5.4 to 1 is actually extremely slow when talking about bait casting reels. So why would you want a slow gear ratio reel, something that picks up a little bit of line? Well, the reason for that is it's a good way to slow yourself down if you generally fish faster than you want. And it's a great way to get baits like crankbaits down to their diving depth and really just kind of slow work them through the bottom. So for me, I'm choosing a Revo winch anytime I really want to slow down. So if I'm throwing crankbaits, it's a really good option. I also really like them for chatterbaits. I like them for chatterbaits if I'm trying to slow myself down and get my chatterbait down into the weeds more. You know, there are times when you're really actually imparting most of the action with a chatterbait by ripping your rod to rip your bait out of the weeds. In that case, the reel speed isn't as important because you're letting the bait get down into the weeds and you're imparting most of the action with the rod. In that case, that's a good reason to choose a Revo winch in this case, because I want my bait to go as slow as possible. So if you're really trying to slow down, you really want to try to grind the bottom, a slow gear ratio reel like this 5.4 Revo winch is a good way to go. So next up, you've got what I would consider your middle of the road ones. In this case, this is a 6.4 to 1 Revo Beast X. It's a little bit of a beefier reel that's made for, you know, having a little bit more torque, a little bit more power. And a 6.4 to 1 is a good all-purpose reel speed. In this case, this reel will pick up 30 inches of line, so an additional 8 inches per reel handle turn. So that's a lot more line that you're picking up. I would say that when you're dealing with your gear ratio speeds of 6.4 to about a 7.3, that right now is right in the middle range. They're good all-purpose reels. They're good for, you know, anything from flipping to casting and winding. You can control pretty much anything with a, you know, a 6.4 to a low 7 gear ratio speed. Definitely for me, one of the reasons why, you know, or one of the baits that I would like something like this that's a lower torque handle, or meaning, you know, it's easier to turn the handle because I'm not trying to turn it at a high speed. It's very similar to riding a bike. If you start in a gear ratio that's a higher speed, it's harder to push the pedal, right? It's almost the same way here because you're pulling in so much more line that the higher your gear ratio speed, the harder it is to turn the handle because you're pulling in so much more line versus something like a 5.4 or the 6.4 here. You can turn the handle much easier and still bring your line in, but it's a lower gear ratio speed. So for me, one of the things I really like this reel for is frog fishing. You know, with frog fishing, I see the bite, I can set the hook, and at that point, I need to winch that fish out of the mat. So at that point, I want something where I can really crank the handle and get them coming to me. So that's a good reason to have like a 6.4 to 7.1. Then you start getting into your higher gear ratio speeds. This is a Revo ALF, which is one of my absolute favorites. This is an 8.0 to 1, and it picks up 32 inches of line here. And this is, for me, this is one of my go-tos for flipping. I absolutely love it for flipping because it's a fast enough speed where I can set the hook and really turn the fish and get the fish coming at me. And I'm not even using the reel handle quite as much. I'm really using more of my body and the rod itself to pull the fish and get them coming towards me. And at that point, I can crank them in pretty good with the higher gear ratio speed. But the reason I tend to prefer higher gear ratio speeds for like flipping is because so much of the motion is just short flips. So you put your bait in, you might move it twice, you crank it in, you flip again. So much of that is about, you know, how fast can I retrieve my bait in, because it's, the more flips I make, the more chance I have of getting bit. So if I have a faster reel and it takes me 3 less reel handle turns to get my bait in, I'm getting back in the water that much faster. So when I'm flipping, I really like the high gear ratio reels for that. It's something that, you know, it's just a matter of the functionality of the reel and how that angler likes to fish. For me, if I'm flipping, it's all about speed most of the time, and the faster I get my bait in, the faster I can make another flip. So that leads me to what Abby Garcia's highest gear ratio reel is. It's a 10.1 to 1 Revo Rocket. This thing is insane in terms of picking up line. It picks up 41 inches per reel turn. So that's a third more than the ALF, which was an 8.0. So it's a phenomenal reel, in my opinion, for flipping. I absolutely love this for when I'm flipping like heavy mats and things where I need to turn the fish, get them coming to me, and it's just the, you know, how fast can I crank them? How fast can I make it another flip every time you pull it up? You know, if you're punching mats, a lot of times you flip it in there, yo-yo it a couple of times, reel it in, flip again. So by being able to reel it in at a third faster than the other reels, throughout the day I am getting that many more flips in the water. It just is something that I think makes me that much more efficient. The thing I want to point out with this reel though is it's like trying to ride a bike. Like I said, when it's in a high speed, you have to be cognizant of the fact that you need to crank on this thing. Like it's a job in order to get that fish coming, to get them out of that thick mat and everything. You just got to mentally, in the beginning, mentally get yourself to crank on it. Once you get it down and you're used to it, it's just a normal reel at that point. But this thing has got some major balls in it, and you better be willing to, you know, crank on a big fish to get them moving, because when you're picking up 41 inches of line per reel turn, you're pulling that fish that much faster and harder at you. But this reel makes me so efficient as a flipper, it's pretty ridiculous. But the importance here, guys, is to choose the right reel speed for the technique that you're doing and the right reel speed for you. You know, in this case, this reel probably wouldn't be good for a, you know, my little boy Hank going out. You know, if he had a fish on, he probably wouldn't be able to crank the handle all that easily. If I gave him the Revo winch at a 5.4, he'd be able to turn that no problem. So a lot of it comes down to the angler, a lot of it comes down to the technique and applying the reel to the right technique. But when you go to purchase a reel, make sure that you're purchasing the right reel for yourself as well as the techniques that you want to apply that reel to. It really is important, and it really can make you a better angler, and it really can make you not as good of an angler. You know, for instance, if I wanted to throw the Revo Rocket with something that I wanted to drag on the bottom, I would be burning that bait probably all the way back in. Yes, I can slow it down, but I'd be better off just going with the Revo winch at a 5.4 to 1 speed. That's my opinion, guys. So let me know what your thoughts are. If you've got a speed or a reel or a technique that you like to apply with a certain gear ratio speed, please share it in the comment section so that the rest of us can learn from you. And if you're looking to purchase a reel, these are all great options, and I'm sure a lot of the viewers have some reels that they want to throw up in the comment section as well. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned. We'll have another video coming out tomorrow.